Local history. Local culture. Local events. Your community. This is the Joe Kelly Show.
Hi there, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. Oneida County Sheriff Robert Maciol is our guest, and we're going to be talking about things having to do with the Sheriff's Office, including some COVID that's going on up there and a tour he's doing of Oneida County. We'll talk to him about that. But before we do that, we're going to say welcome. Good to see you again.
Thank you. Great to be here.
Good.
Unfortunately, winter's on its way, but that's not a bad thing.
In fact, that's one of the things we'll have to talk about later on in the show is snowmobiling, because the Sheriff's Office has a part in that. But first, the correctional facility, hard hit by COVID, yeah?
Yes. You know, we've had our hurdles through the past couple of years. Over the last several months, we've only had like a random case here or there, so not even enough to have us change anything. But all that changed recently, a few days ago. About the same time, we had both some of the incarcerated individuals, along with some of our staff members, complain of symptoms, and then obviously they tested. And so at about the same time, we had just a couple. It was on a first case started on a Friday. We had a couple officers and a couple inmates test positive. Then that following Saturday, jumped up a little higher, and then, you know, right now we're in the 20s with as far as inmates that are have tested positive, and we're about 15, 16, 17 correction officers that tested positive. So it's certainly that has caused some great challenges for us, because, as you know, we've always struggled with trying to fill vacancies at the Oneida County Correctional Facility. I have about 60 or 64 full-time openings at the jail for employees. So you add another 15 or 18 employees who are now out of work for at least 10 days. That certainly creates an incredible amount of overtime, stress, logistical nightmare for just about everybody. But I also want to say that there is no other group of men, I don't care, men and women, I don't care what organization we're talking about, but these people have fought through some of the most challenging times. And the members of the Sheriff's Office, like I said, they continue to work 24/7 nonstop.
I can't imagine an environment that is more suited to spreading COVID than a correctional facility. I mean, you're packed in there tight. Sure. You're intermingling. Yeah,
we've implemented a lot of things. I mean, right now we're doing the tracing to see if we can figure out where this came from, because you know, masking has been in place both by staff and inmates right out of the gate. Any new admissions into the jail, any new incarcerated individuals, you're going to hear me use that term, not to get off topic, but the state has passed a law where we can no longer use the word inmates, but I'll come back to that in a minute. But when an incarcerated individual comes into the correctional facility, they're actually placed in an orientation unit for 14 days. Now, typically it was always 5 days, but since COVID, we were able to get permission to up that to 14. That gets us through that 10-day period, plus a couple days where someone, if they did come in with COVID, they're going to have it, and they're going to get through their period where it's contagious, and they'll be in a separate part of the jail. So we're confident it didn't come from new admissions coming into the jail, but we've got a lot of factors. I mean, obviously you have employees coming in and out, going home every day. You've got staff that's not sworn staff. We have medical personnel, private company that does our medical services, food services. We've got buildings and grounds that are in the facility. So there's many ways that it could find its way in, and not everybody's vaccinated. We offer vaccinations to inmates when they do come in. We've had a great relationship with the health department, because inmates, we try to use the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for those that want it, because it's one shot, because I never know, these inmates could be with us today and gone tomorrow. I don't know. And then obviously employees are encouraged to get vaccinated. Those that don't have to test weekly as far as COVID testing, if they're not vaccinated.
What do you have any percentages of the number of inmates that I guess I can use as much as I want. Inmates that are getting the shots and staff that are getting shots?
As far as staff goes, I mean, like I said, I'm big on personal choice, but I wish everyone would get vaccinated. But again, that's their choice. But we're probably only running about 60% of our staff that's vaccinated inside the facility. Other divisions in the sheriff's office are higher. But as far as corrections goes, it's about 60%. Inmates, we're probably much less, but again, it is what it is.
Yeah.
We try to enforce the masking policy. That can be challenging at times. Right now our population in the jail is about 365 inmates, so constantly making sure they're masking 24 hours a day can sometimes be a challenge.
And that facility will hold
632, to be exact.
Yeah.
Yep.
And with the officers that are on leave, plus your vacancies,
Yes.
Is there a number that the state says you've got to have X number of people in this jail
Yes.
per shift?
That is correct. It depends on the shift, because midnights it's much less because everyone's locked in their cells sleeping. So we have less staff working midnights. The day and afternoon shifts are about equivalent. But what happens is if we're talking about, I'm just going to use round numbers to simplify it. If we have to have 50 people working and there's only 25 available to work, that means the 25 of the 50 currently working are going to be held over. So you've got people, I mean, and typically not that much, but typically on an average day, somewhere between 10, 12, 15 people will be held over an additional at least 4, if not 8 additional hours. So you go into work at 7 in the morning, you really don't know if you're coming home at 3 p.m., 7 p.m., or 11 p.m. It all depends on how the next shift is playing out. If people are calling in sick, or in this case, if we have people out on COVID, because we have to have specific posts covered inside the jail per our commission rules that set forth in our minimum staffing standards.
What happens if you get to the point where someone says, I just can't, work those kinds of...
Well, we do have occasionally, some people can't work overtime. They have maybe a medical excuse or something like that.
Yeah, well, even if Sheriff, if somebody worked from 7 to, what would the
longest we could hold them is 16 hours.
All right, so if they worked 16 hours today,
yep.
And then you had the same problem, maybe even a worse problem the next day.
You could.
Yeah, I mean, at some point...
by seniority, they get to pick who's going to stay and who's not, but a lot of times if everybody says no, then a certain number of people have to be ordered to stay. I mean, it is what it is. We can't shut the facility down. It's not like a retail store where we can turn the close sign around and everybody goes home. We can't do that. But like I said, I cannot say enough about the men and women working there, because they've been tremendous through this whole ordeal of the past couple of years.
Are you catching a break in the fact that the correctional facility is not up to its maximum capacity?
Not really, because of classification, we have inmates separated in various categories depending on male, female, their age, the type of crime. There might be separate orders, gang affiliations. We're not going to keep sex offenders in with other type of offenders. So we literally are using every part of the facility for one thing or another. So the housing unit for let's say the females, or let's say a male specific type of classification, if there's 56 cells in that one unit, but we only have 30 inmates in there, those other 26 cells have to remain vacant because only a certain classification of incarcerated person can go in there. So.
Yeah. When we come back, let's talk about, you just had a test.
Yes.
Speaking of the correctional facility, they just had a test. We'll ask you about that. Oneida County Sheriff Rob Maciol is our guest. We're talking about law enforcement issues in Oneida County. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Oneida County Sheriff Robert Maciol is our guest. We're talking about law enforcement issues in Oneida County. We were just talking before the break about the Oneida County Correctional Facility, and it's been a struggle. I mean, you've been coming up here and sitting with me, thank you, for many years, and it's always been a struggle to get the correctional officers that you need up there.
Yes.
And I think it's a couple reasons, right?
Well, there's a few, and we've added a couple to it since the last time we spoke. But unfortunately, our neighbors, our neighboring counties, and and also state facilities, doing the same type of work, they pay better. Some cases significantly better. They do offer significantly better benefits at retirement. And our people, rightfully so, when they come into this career and they're starting young and they're trying to raise a family, if they can work, county next door and make $8,000 a year more before overtime, and they can retire earlier, or they get better health insurance at retirement. Not that, when I came on the job 32 years ago, the last thing in retirement wasn't in my vocabulary. Times are a little different now, and kids, we were talking about children before we started here today, but they're planning their futures out a lot more than my generation did. So we're dealing with that, and plus the climate of working in a correctional facility or working in law enforcement. It's not as locally. We're in great shape. We have a great community relationship with those out in the various cities, towns, and villages, but when you look at policing across America, it's not what it used to be, and it's more challenging. We've also had some companies move into our community, some very large companies that are going to do great things for economic development in Oneida County, and but they also need security officers. So believe it or not, I've lost several corrections officers to a private company that's new to the area.
Interesting, I never thought of that.
But their pay is significantly higher, and they don't have to deal with the jail setting, the bizarre hours, missing the holidays and the weekends with their families. They don't have to deal with that when they're working in the private sector. There's also a federal law enforcement agency that has greatly expanded up at Griffiths International Airport, because of the great things that are happening up there, which required more federal law enforcement, and they're actually taking our peace officers, our corrections officers from us. They're working security at Griffiths, not at Griffiths, but for one of the research laboratories nearby to protect those facilities. So I'm in competition with 3 times as many people as I was a couple years ago. You can ask any sheriff across the state or across this country. It's always been a challenge to get corrections officers, but like I said, with the law enforcement climate out there in parts of the country, with competition higher than it's ever been, and it's everything working against us right now.
Can you pay more?
We can, and we advocate for that all the time. The interesting thing about working for the sheriff's office, we have 2 unions at the sheriff's office, but I'm considered a co-employer with the county, because obviously they work for the sheriff's office, they work for the sheriff as an independently elected person. I run the day-to-day operations and make all those decisions that come with that. But the executive or legislative branch of county government, they control the funding for salaries and the level of benefits and retirement that all the employees for Oneida County are in. So when we sit down at the table, it's the sheriff's office, the union, and the county executive's office, and he negotiates on behalf on their side, and we work the other sides, try to come up with a compromise, because obviously we want to pay our people as much as we can to keep them, and at the same time, the county executive and the county legislature, they're trying to balance that with looking out what's in the best interest of the taxpayers. So it's a balancing act, but my fear is if we don't keep up with our competitors, we're at critical staffing levels now, and I just don't want to. I can't see this continue, because again, we're putting more strain on our current employers and employees, and I don't know where the future takes us if we can't get this fixed.
Yeah, the test that was recently offered, civil service test. Did anybody turn out for it?
We have had a number of people sign up for it, but certainly nowhere near the number that we wanted or have gotten in the past. Typically, you would get hundreds of people to sign up for our corrections exam, 5 years ago or more. This time we had just over 50 sign up. I think after the applications were reviewed, 36 of the applications were approved. When I've got 64 positions or 60 positions open, I've only got 36 that take the test. Those 36, not only do they have to pass the test, but they've got to make it through a criminal background, a psychiatric evaluation, and also a polygraph, and a medical exam. So that 36 in reality will probably, if everything goes in our favor, we'll end up with 20. So we'll be able to fill a third of our vacancies. That's why we're continuously recruiting. Our recruitment efforts are at levels we've never seen before. We've gone to colleges, high schools, hockey games. We've done job fairs at various stores. Fitness centers has been a big one for us. We've gone to all the area fitness centers trying to recruit people in, but it's not as easy. And it's not just something we're facing. I just read a report on the Syracuse Police Department. I mean, typically they get 500 or more people sign up to take an exam. Their most recent test, they had 90 people sign up, where they normally get 500.
Yeah.
So it's not an Oneida County thing. It's a law enforcement thing, but it's a critical, it's a serious situation. It really is.
You said you and others in New York State are now prohibited from using the term inmate?
Yes. Our friend Governor Cuomo, on his way out, the last legislation that he signed officially changed the name of an inmate to an incarcerated person. He felt that was inappropriate. Well, it was a legislative, so obviously the members of the Senate and the Assembly voted on this before he signed it. But we now have to refer to them as incarcerated individuals. And there is some leeway given to us because obviously it's going to take time. I mean, I've been in this business, I've been in law enforcement 32 years, and you've heard me use both terms just in our interview here because I've said that for so long, and that's never been looked upon as a negative term. I'm not sure what happened there. So trying to get myself to change, but it's difficult.
Yeah. When we come back, let's talk a little about the state. Bail reform is something that has really impacted not just our area, but the entire state. Oneida County Sheriff Robert Maciol is our guest. Short break, right back. And welcome back, everybody. Thanks for sticking with us. Oneida County Sheriff Robert Maciol is our guest. We're talking about law enforcement in Oneida County. I remember quite clearly, and I don't recall the date, but I remember quite clearly you sitting right there and telling me something about bail reform. In fact, you asked me that I'd like to bring something up, and it's called bail reform. And you predicted what's happened.
It's a lot worse than what we predicted. When I say we, my colleague, my fellow sheriffs across the state, when this was proposed 3 years ago, and we had a lot of stuff thrown at us in a short period of time. I mean, we were getting word that bail reform was coming, legalization of marijuana was being talked about, raise the age initiative where we took 16 and 17-year-olds and they're no longer in the adult criminal justice system. Now you've got to be 18 years or older to be in the adult criminal justice system. We had all these are significant changes. And all we were trying to do is say, let's slow down a little bit. Let's play this out. Let's see how it's going to, talk about different scenarios. But with bail reform, and we're not saying things don't need to be reformed from time to time. We're all for that. Bail reform came out of a very sad case in Rikers Island. Make a long story short, a young teenager was placed into Rikers Island in New York City on a minor offense, had no money for bail, had no family to look out for him, kind of got lost in the system. When they realized this kid was in there for a long time, he had been assaulted both physically and sexually. They said, oh my God, he never even had his day in court. They dismissed the charges, they released him. Shortly thereafter, he killed himself because of the tragedy and the trauma that he went through in there. So those are reasons that Rikers, let's say, needs to look at things. But when they took reform and you had a bunch of downstate legislators who came up, instead of like reaching out and consulting with law enforcement, prosecutors, they didn't even talk to public defenders. In their wisdom, they came up with this list of crimes that judges can no longer put bail on for people. When we first saw that list, it had some violent crimes on there, violent when this first rolled out. We're talking second-degree burglary, second-degree strong-arm robbery. Things were on there that if we caught you, if we were lucky enough to solve the crime, we gave you a ticket. That's all we could do. So in the first round of heavy lobbying, once it was passed, they did take a couple of these charges away, but the list is still incredible. And we see time after time people being victimized, and the offenders are just let go. We had a case here locally. Individual came up here from the state of Texas, working construction, had a past in Texas, came up here to work, lost his job, becomes homeless up here, commits a burglary in the village of Whitesboro, gets brought before the judge. The judge has to ROR him pursuant to bail reform, releases him, walks out the door. A few hours later.
ROR is released on their own recognizance?
Yes, yep. He releases him, walks out the door. Within a few hours, he finds himself in Oswego. How he got there, I have no idea. Steals a car. Gets caught, gets charged with a felony grand larceny, now is arraigned on this felony grand larceny. The court still, again, has to let him go with a return date on a ticket. He's released, somehow makes his way right back to here again from Oswego, commits a third burglary in the village of Whitesboro, gets charged, arraigned at centralized arraignment court where the first arraignment happened. Again, after 3 felonies, he has to be let go. He walks out of Cap Court, which is located at the jail, centralized arraignment part, that's what that stands for. Walks out of our jail, walks down the road, goes on the base road, commits a 4th burglary to a construction site. Our people, are right there near the scene. I have staff that takes him into custody, brings him back. Now, finally, after the 4th attempt, the district attorney's office is now able to file a motion with the court to have bail put on this person who is a significant danger to the community. And he's bail was placed. He's not yet made bail. He's still in our custody awaiting indictment through the grand jury. But my point is, the way bail reform is set up, burglary, 3rd degree, grand larceny, that's still on that master list of things that they can't hold them for. And even in cases where they have to, or they're allowed to put bail on them, jail must be the last resort. They must try to eliminate ankle bracelets, or do we get them on probation first? Jail, holding them in jail, setting bail has to be the last resort. And in this case, we had 4 victims to felony crimes before we were able to hold him. I mean, and this is just one story of many that we've documented across the state. This bail reform, it's a failure, and it's made our communities less safe.
Do you see, we've only got a minute or so left, but do you see any changes coming down the pike?
We do, finally. We've got the year of senators and assembly people downstate, not our people here. I mean, they get it up here. Downstate, and from just hearing a couple press conferences from Governor Hochul, it's definitely got her attention. So we're pushing hard for some significant changes. We'll keep our fingers crossed. Let's give judges the discretion on whether to hold someone or not. That would simplify this whole system.
You're going around Oneida County, I understand, going to senior citizen centers?
Yes, we're just starting to it's nice that we're getting back out, but because with COVID, but we're visiting senior centers, talking about our Project Lifesaver, Yellow Dot program, senior scams. We're starting up our Coffee with the Cops events, which are great. We're going to be hitting some convenience stores, some diners, just to get out. We want people to see, talk about these very issues and how important they are to us, and we want to get feedback from the community. And we've been through a very difficult couple of years. We're still taking all COVID precautions, obviously, but at the same time, we've got to get back out there and work with the community.
Is the road patrol test coming up for somebody?
There isn't one scheduled currently. I mean, the one that was out, everyone had to be signed up for it. But again, if anyone's looking for a career with the Sheriff's Office, we can take applications at any time. We're looking for retirees to come back with help with school security, road patrol deputies, corrections officers. That's our most significant shortage right now. But if you contact our community affairs unit, you can go to our website, OneidaCountySheriff.us. Anybody that's got a smartphone, go to the App Store and just put in Oneida County Sheriff. We have a free app. You get all our news alerts, press releases, road closures, plus you can communicate directly with us and we'll get you a job application through that means.
And we've only got 30 seconds, but you're going to gear up pretty quick now for snowmobile patrol, yeah?
Boats are all put away. They're winterized. They're wrapped up. They're in storage, except we keep a couple, God forbid we need a rescue type situation. But snowmobiles are making their way out. I know all the snowmobile clubs have been marking their trails this past couple weekends. And keep our fingers crossed that we get some snow, because that's a great part of tourism here in Oneida County.
Always a pleasure to see you. Thanks
Same
for coming
here.
in.
Thank you very much.
Okay, come back sooner rather than later.
Absolutely.
That's going to do it for us this week. We'll be back next week. We'll do it all again. Don't forget cnyhomepage.com. We got a lot of good stuff there, including archives of our show. Until next time, take care of yourself, everybody.